You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overell, editors of the Batuta Advocate, on Desert Rock FM.
Hello and welcome back to the Batuta Advocate radio show. My name is Wendell Hussey and you are hearing it first up today because we're doing something a little bit different. Clancy Overell, the editor of the Batuta Advocate, decided he wanted to go over to the Venice Film Festival, but obviously he needed a bit of a financial incentive there as well, so he jumped into bed with another artistic institution, the UFC, and they organised for him to go over there to Paris and cover some of the big fights over there before his trip to Venice. So we're going to play some clips there and have a bit of a discussion about Clancy in Paris. Clancy Overell and Errol Parker are in the booth with me here today to walk through this journey into the art of hitting, punching, choking, kicking, all that sort of stuff as well. Grappling, getting sound bites.
No biting.
No nut kicking, none of that sort of stuff.
Chinese burns.
No scratching.
Mm-hmm.
No typewriters? You can do a typewriter, can't you?
No.
Yeah, that got banned with all the new grappling rules, I think, the typewriter.
Yeah. No screeching in the ear. That I
go.
used to cop that from the
Lots of specifics
Yeah,
you can't get into. Nipple cripples, a bit hard with the gloves, but I mean, technically you probably could get away with it if you wanted to. Anyway, that's what Clancy was having a look at over there in Paris. He's just returned to the Channel Country off the back of a hip operation as well. It's been a big few weeks, Clancy. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good. I thought I was going to struggle with the hip on tour. Of course, humble, as successful as the Batuta Advocate is, I'm still flying economy. And I was a bit worried about it. I got through a bit of melatonin and some other goodies that caused me a great deal of white noise on the flight. Although I kind of got a reality check when I was there at the Accor Arena in Paris, and I had the great pleasure of meeting Justin Tafa.
Another brawler,
another heavyweight who has had quite a hip operation, and one that happened in Sydney, like a scrape into his spine, I believe. They had to level him out a little bit and really, really clean him up. He was there, and I cannot understand why the fuck he came over, because that just what was happening in his body at that time, which was still not healed, and he was on crutches in a city where he doesn't speak the language, sounded like pain. But I do believe he was well looked after by the UFC.
medicated.
I'd say he'd have to have been, yeah.
Do you have any fears of DVT? That's what I always think about after surgery, getting on a plane. The blood clots.
No. Is that something you worried about, Wendell?
No, more from the vaccine, I guess. But yeah. No, just something. I was just wondering if that popped in your head after a big operation like that.
No, didn't really think about it. I was mostly thinking about getting some sleep.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's worse ways to go, really, isn't there?
On an aeroplane, there is, for sure.
Like with all these things with the increase in the cost of living and whatnot, and no one can afford to do anything just peacefully drifting off in an economy class chair on the way back from Europe isn't too bad a way
Fair.
to go.
I don't think you drift. I think with the blood clots and stuff, I think it's similar to lying on the canvas there and having a heavyweight just batter your head in. It's a real thumping sensation, apparently. So, yeah, anyway, we want to talk about the heavyweight battle that you went and saw over there in Paris. Clancy. It was a full fight card. It was Tuivasa, a friend of the show.
Headlining up there against the hometown heroes, Cyril Gahn.
Yep.
I arrived, I'm going to say it was the 31st, so that would have been Thursday, Paris time. Mm-hmm. And I pretty much dumped my bags in my hotel in Bastille and made my way to the Pullman Hotel, where the Bam Bam entourage was kind of already underway. I was thinking there, because I was floating, as you said, Bam Bam Tuivasa, friend of the show, I was wondering, am I going to be somewhat of a nuisance here? Because, you start thinking about the amount of people that a fighter travels with. They've got their trainers, they've got their partners, they've got their kids. In Bam Bam's case, he had his kid there, and he had all of his cousins, all the Usos flew over too. And I was wondering, are there too many people in his life back home here right now? Would that be causing him nerves? But when I got there, I realised I didn't even make up a percentage of the amount of friends and family that were there. They were based in the lobby of the Pullman Hotel and out the front. And I did have a word to his coach, Sully, and I said, is this going to be a distraction? And Sully said, no, actually it isn't with Bam Bam. It would be with some fighters, but it's actually after, 3 months training, or 6 months between Thailand and Dubai, being able to just come back and down from his room, go up for his rest because he's still cutting weight before the weigh-in. He's exhausted. But being able to go up and down, and it feels like home every time it's kind of like Christmas time. Once everyone's settled in, you leave your room, someone's there that you can have a little chat to.
Is there a bit of a distraction element to it as well? He's not thinking too much and not dwelling too much.
How have you been?
Up.
Oh, thanks for coming out. That was the feeling, and I think when it was all said and done, it was great to have the numbers there because you wouldn't, it's already happened and he's just lost. But if, his last fight, not as many people could make it. There were still borders and everything in Houston, and there was 4 or 5 people. When you come home to that after a loss, and that's pretty grim. So, it would have been glorious if he'd won because everyone was there with him to celebrate, but it was better that they were there when he lost, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so can you talk us through the logistics of how this big group of people would get through Paris to go to the venue?
Well, what I did was I was actually not there to be a part of the Tuivasa entourage, which I ended up being well and truly a part of. I was there to do these interviews, which we'll play in a bit. So I kind of was able to walk on my own, move on my own time. Although, as I said, the first place I went to was to go see them, and I met all the cousins and the uncles and then other family friends and, friends from Dubai. And there was actually an American guy there who's a, real estate guy who they'd made friends in Houston. He must have hosted them, and so he was brought along. And so to hear a 50-year-old Texan man, learning words like USO and FTA and Chi-Hu was hilarious. There was all this shit happening. So I'm glad I got in there and met all them. Then I went and roamed around Paris to see if there was any scoops or any landmarks I could visit. So I did that, but I did notice once I was in the mix, had a few phone numbers of the boys just to figure out what was going on because it was day after day. So the first day of the media day where I got in there, actually we can play that question now.
Lad, I just want to ask they're all talking about fans here. You've got close to 30 to 40 friends and family that have come out, mostly from Western Sydney. You said there's a great opportunity for you to bring the family out and you have a reason for everyone to travel to Paris, but they're doing it for you too. So what is it about that part of the world? They're obviously breeding tough. They breed them tough out there, but there's a lot of love. And are you feeling that right now in Paris?
Definitely. Like I said, some of my closest friends and my family have made a 24-hour plane ride to come and watch me do my thing. And win or lose, I know that they're on my side, and that's a great feeling to have. And shout out to the rest of Western Sydney. One day we'll be fighting back home, that's for sure.
And do you feel sorry for the poor Frenchman that had to sit between 80 of your cousins on the flight here to Paris?
My poor brothers, they had to sit. They're twice the size of me. I wouldn't want to get stuck with them on the chair, that's for sure.
Thanks, lad.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as you can see, I was well inside the tent there. Had my media accreditation, thank you to the UFC. Batuta Advocates never felt more international than we did over the weekend. That was the Thursday. Got that out of the way and kind of linked up with a few of these guys. And then I realised as I'm out, at the Eiffel Tower, I realised that a lot of his core circle weren't going anywhere else. They were just going to be around, either with him when he needed to go somewhere or in the lobby. That's where they were, drinking coffee and eating hotel food, which I guess is also a part of that support network that he has. But, I'd be getting messages from my boy Hammer saying, where are you at? What are you up to? I say, I'm just in town at the moment. What are you doing in town? Just looking at one of the greatest human achievements in Western civilization.
The Eiffel Tower.
The Mona Lisa. Or as one of the boys called it, the Mona Val Lisa.
Classic.
And, doing that kind of shit. And I'll be like, where are you? Oh, we're just hanging out at the hotel. Like, that was where they were at. They weren't in Paris. They were.
There's not that many things to see in
So
Paris,
this was your first
really.
time in Paris, was it?
Yeah, it was my first time. So I had to peel away and check a few things off the list. And I got all that done. You can do that in a day and a half.
Yeah, what is there? Eiffel Tower. What else?
I do know that our friends down at the German club in the old area of town, they do often openly refer to Paris as being a cesspool and an absolute shithole. Did you find that?
I know. I found it. Actually, you know what? I think a lot of this shit about the French being rude is like an American conspiracy. And of course, Errol, we've seen him heading when we were in Ireland and we were meeting up with the Waterford Whispers over there, and we saw the Americans cutting around Ireland, and they're absolute pigs. And only 10% of that country has a passport, and only 50% of the 10% that have a passport have been anywhere but Mexico and the Caribbean. So they kind of travel with a closed mind, and that when you refuse to kind of cooperate with a language barrier, I guess it's easy to feel like the French are being rude to you. But I found them quite pleasant, as long as
you know a little bit of French too, don't you?
It's almost like the Americans in Europe are like the Australians in Southeast Asia.
Absolutely, they're very demanding and they're very noisy. But I find if you can learn your words, your merci, and that's about all I had. Bonjour, bonsoir, salut. Those kind of things, they know you're trying, and they'll come and they wait on your table. That's another thing. Who are we to say that they're rude? Like, we're sitting in a pub or in a brasserie or a restaurant, and they're just bringing beer to your table. We don't get that kind of luxury in Australia. We've got to go line up at the bar. Yeah, the only time I've ever had that was during those COVID, no vertical standing rules, when the actual bartenders had to come to you. But as for the service, I found the French quite lovely. I do like the fact that there's a sense of pride in the French, whether they're very newly arrived French people, first-generation migrants. Everyone's French, and they don't fuck around with any of this kind of we're more French than you, we're more French than that. It was an interesting thing to see, but I guess it's a very old city, and it's always been very multicultural. So I did, I got stuck into the snails, but I also got stuck into the falafels and that kind of, that kind of French cuisine, French cuisine that you don't see on the postcards.
Modern fusion.
Yeah.
As someone who is hoping to get Rugby Australia to send them over to the World Cup next year, what other stuff was there in Paris? Obviously, the Eiffel Tower. Did you do a few other bits and pieces, or was it mostly work?
I went to the Louvre.
Yep.
Surprised to learn that whole thing's underground. Arc de Triomphe.
Wait, did you think that the entire museum was inside that glass pyramid?
No, I thought it was inside the building next to it, which apparently is just like almost a statue in itself. So,
did you go to the Musée d'Orsay?
Yeah, went there.
Did you go to Shakespeare and Co., that famous bookshop?
No, did not go there. Didn't have time really.
Did you go
grueling schedule.
Did you go to Jim Morrison's grave?
No, didn't. That's a bit out of town. I did go to the nightclubs in Bastille. That was a bit of fun.
It's not too far from the famous Moulin Rouge, where I thought a man of your ilk would be.
No,
an evening time in Paris.
I was warned to stay away from the strip clubs. Apparently, they're not as inviting as they are.
It's a burlesque club.
Yeah. Well, apparently they rob you and they drug you. So I kept away from the Moulin Rouge.
Sounds like heaven.
Yeah, I mean, was wary of the pickpockets. I came with a bum bag, so naturally with the bum bag, I slid straight into this entourage of Western Sydney lads.
Yeah, I think that the tile of this podcast needs to be that picture of you with your bum bag out and your Birkenstocks on and the open shirt.
Well, there was also the bum bag with RMs, which I don't think's been done before. That was what I was rocking at the media conferences. So day one was the media conference, and that was where I'm going over there to watch Whittaker and Tuivasa fight. So I wasn't overly invested in the rest of the card. Not a diehard UFC man myself, aside from these personal relationships that we've all formed with these Australian fighters just coming through Desert Rock Studios. But after a day sitting there listening to all these guys, they're all media trained. The French did a very clever thing in putting a French Canadian on the card, and having basically the MC of the entire weekend was the famous Georges St. Pierre. So you've got all of these guys that can bounce in both languages for both international journalists. But what they would do, and it's something you see a lot with the Asian tennis players, when they get asked a question and they can speak English, but they answer it in their native language, which is it's a great kind of moment of pride, and that was happening a lot with these
Well, it's
media
also
conferences.
much easier to not get lost in translation. I mean, if English isn't your first gibber, then I guess you're going to speak in your jabber, aren't you?
Well, the French Canadians were very polished in both, but there was a moment where they could see a Frenchman asking them a question. These are at the weigh-ins anyway. A Frenchman asks a question trying to speak English, and he answers in French, and the crowd would just go ballistic. So it was that was what I was talking about. That French pride was really on display, and I think that was magnified by the fact that it was the first UFC Paris has ever had, or France has ever had. It was illegal 18 months ago, and I was asking around why I didn't take the French as wowzers. Like, why was UFC? I mean, if it's been legal in Australia for how long, and we're the real nanny state. But they were telling me there was a judo monopoly on mixed martial arts in France. They kind of had the big board, and they kind of kept MMA out, the UFC out anyway.
Big judo.
Yeah,
judo
which
country.
is funny because, as a people, it is, one of their cultural sports is to fight the police in the street.
Yeah.
Which, there's absolutely no rules if you're fighting a cop.
No. And, that's where the mixed martial arts are quite, handy, because you can punch a cop, you can knock a cop over, but can you go to ground with one? That's what the yellow shirts really pioneered.
Can you finish it off? Yeah, so you were at that press conference for what, a couple of hours?
Yeah, a couple of hours, but I sat there and I started getting invested in all these little bloke stories. And when I say little blokes, I mean like the lower divisions.
Still quite large men, some
So
of them.
people who are shorter than you.
No, I mean like lightweights, like they're real.
Oh,
little.
they are really lightweights, right.
What, like two jockeys having a fight over...
Yeah, like little squirrels breaking each other's arms. There was one particular bout that I became very, very invested in, having sat through their media conferences. And like I said, they're very media trained. Charles Jourdain, he was a French Canadian, and it was against the Englishman Nathaniel Wood. Both little kind of whippersnappers, but they both had their own stories. Like, I think that part of Canada, French Canada, really took a big whack in COVID.
Oh, I thought you were about to say that's the part where all the dwarves come from.
Oh, well, it would make sense judging by this division. That was featherweight. He'd had a really hard time. The wife and kids, they hadn't left the house, and now that the borders were open, it was like, I'm going to take this back to Canada. And then Nathaniel Wood kind of spoke quite openly about mental health challenges he had. I guess everything that they're all talking was informed about the last couple of years, and that was Nathaniel Wood. He actually he won, the Englishman won, and was talking about it in the ring, anxiety and depression in the post-match interview, and then back in the presser. So I started getting really invested in all these different stories, but the real kind of, when I saw the entourage kick into gear, was the weigh-ins. So in the mornings they have the official weigh-ins, where they get the actual weight.
Yep.
And that's why Bam Bam was napping and, as I said, really slowing down, quite faded. And you hear them in that first media day, the day before the weigh-ins, where they're all kind of trying to give it their best, but they're all running a bit slow. And then they do the weigh-ins in the morning, the official weigh-ins, and then they do the ceremonial weigh-ins in the afternoon. So if you see the ceremonial weigh-ins where, like, it's the shirts off, they're on stage, the crowds are cheering.
Yeah.
George St. Pierre's on stage. Usually Dana's there, but he didn't make it out. They've got the weight already. You know what I mean? The weight's already been done at the ceremonial weigh-in. The only time they'll weigh them at the ceremonial weigh-in is if they didn't make weight in the morning, and then they get another 6 hours to get to that weight.
Go and sit in the sauna, don't drink any water.
Take some laxatives.
Yeah. So everyone made weight, and then so when they bring them in for the official weigh-in, it's shirt off on the stage, flex, and no one looks at anything, and they go, and then they're off the weights again. And then from there, I got to go backstage and interview both Whittaker and Ty.
Yeah, right. And so that's where you're sitting with the other journos and you're firing these questions at him. The first shot you had was at Whittaker. He was first up, and this is what you said to him.
You listen to Clancy Overell here on the Batuta Advocate podcast. I'm joined by Mr. Whittaker. It's been an exciting couple of days here in Paris, and I'm looking at these fighters as they're getting up on the scales, and there's a big grin on their faces. How has it been, mate? Preparing, how was the weigh-in, and was it what you wanted?
Yeah, the weigh-in was perfect. We've got it down to a science. Just another day in the office. Made weight, enjoying some good grub, and we're going to get to work tomorrow. Yep. That's it.
And how was that first meal afterwards, or do you still have to pace yourself from there?
Mate, spectacular. I can't explain it.
So what's we're currently 24 hours out here. What is the plan from here for something like this, man?
I'm going to eat, stretch tonight. Just enjoy myself, relax, not worry about the fight too much, and then tomorrow's game day. I'm going to follow the program that we've developed over years of practice and trial and error, and get to work. That's what I do. Tomorrow I go in the office, check it afterwards, and worry about that then.
Is it an office thing for you? Because we're looking at obviously Tuivasa and a few of the other locals as well. The locals, it's a family affair. Are you just rolling with a kind of skeleton crew here, or have you got people? Have you got love?
Oh, yeah, I brought my wife and my youngest. I got my coaches here, but we're here to work. Yep. This isn't a holiday for us. We're here to get a certain job done. I'm going to try and cave Martin's head in. Yep. Martin. I'm leaving that in.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and cave his head in. And, yeah, that's what, I'm paid to do.
We sat next to the Italian, so I'd really enjoy that if you did.
I'm gonna try, mate. I'm going to give my best go.
Well, thanks for joining us, mate. George St. Pierre said in there, every fight, it could be against the same fighter in every ring, but you're not fighting the same fighter. What's different about this fighter that's going to be facing that Italian compared to your last fight?
Oh, mate, I've gotten better across the board.
Yep.
And, you're gonna see a really good Rob tomorrow.
Okay.
You're going to see a really good Rob.
All good, mate. We're loving this. Western Sydney is making a name for itself in Paris. Thanks for joining us, mate.
We are thriving. Thank you very much.
And we did see a very good version of Rob. He absolutely punished Daniel Vettori, former New Zealand cricket's great. Daniel Vettori's cousin, Martin Vettori.
Martin Vettori, from hailing from Napoli. That was where I saw real fans, though. And I was as I said there, I was sitting next to them at the weigh-ins and I was sitting next to them at the actual fight. The Vettori fans were like nothing I've ever seen before. And I've been to EPL matches, I've seen soccer hooligans. They are absolutely depraved, psychopathic fans. They were singing Pavarotti in the crowd, and they just didn't stop. And they don't drink as well. You'd think, oh, yeah, pissed UFC. They're not. They're Italian. So they're like... I actually remember being at the bar at the fight and seeing these Italians blow up that they were only serving beer. I was like, what are you after? You want some wine or do you want some One guy said, do you know where a cocktail? I was like, no, mate, we're at a UFC match.
Look, sugary cocktails, that could make sense. Obviously very expensive. Yeah. Maybe not in a nice glass, but...
Fuck, they'll have to carry on.
And it was truly one of the great moments of that whole weekend was watching just, as he said, cave his head in. And you can see that in that interview. He is like an engineer. That's the first time I've spoken to an athlete where it's like he's looking at this so kind of analytically. Not even that much heart in it. It's more plan and execution. And that was exactly what it was. And he gave a great post-match speech where he said, I'm the most feared and most dangerous man in this division, including the title holder. So power to Whittaker. That was... that went exactly to plan.
Yeah, he's certainly very good at what he does, and he is a very, very scary man. It's like even when he's talking there, you can hear him just dialed in. He's a bit of a...
So how much of a hiding did Whittaker get himself? Like, was he able just to, walk out of the ring and be like, all right, let's go and get a nice steak?
Yeah, he was fine. Actually, I did see him at the after-match function, just sitting around the table with some mates, digging to the esky, digging through for a cold beer. And I was actually thinking that looking at him, I mean, obviously he's in shape. He's wearing shirt and boardies. And I remember thinking, you're kind of average height. You've got like a goatee. You look like a type of guy you'd see in a pub. And I wonder if that, you go think like the idea of the most dangerous man in the room hiding in plain sight. That's another thing about him. He's very unassuming. But yeah, he was fine. I don't actually think he took too much of a whack in the fight either. It was just clinical.
There you go. And now another one of Western Sydney's greats, Bam Bam Tuivasa, the main event against Cyril Gane. You spoke to him shortly after that. Here's what he had to say.
So, what's it doing, lad?
Not much. What's doing?
You've just done your way in, Bam Bam. Was that what you'd planned for, or was it down to the wire?
No, definitely. It's I'm in enemy territory, and it's understandable that I get the boos. But if they were cheering for me more than him, I think. Yeah.
I mean, the French are banging on about you getting booed. You're not getting booed that loudly. It's like there's a lot of love in the fans here as well. I mean, it also could have the fact that your entourage is growing by the day as well.
You gotta love Bam Bam. I'm a lovable chap, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he's a good egg. Now, tell me, what was your first meal after you've fucking made weight?
Nutella.
Yeah.
On bread, always.
Yeah.
They always have Nutella backstage, and I munch straight into it.
Energy's lifted. What do you do now? It's an early bed. We're 24 hours away.
No, I stay up late tonight, and then try and sleep as much as I can.
Yeah.
So try and sleep in to as long as I can, and then it's fight day.
It's on, baby.
It's game time.
What are we thinking backstage when you're getting your hands all sorted out? Would it be Luke Coombs again this year?
Yeah, I've always got my playlist.
They say nothing lasts forever. Great at karaoke, this lad.
I've done a few karaoke in my time. A few karaoke rooms.
Oh yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, let me just say you've got your son here. You've got all your family. You saw your brothers roll in today. How long since they seen you?
It's been a few months. Yeah.
Because the first thing they said, do you remember the first thing they said to you after they saw you? I haven't seen you for 2 months, 3 months.
What did they say?
Hey, will that fit me?
Yeah, well, they got their own bag this time. They're in the corner, so they'll probably get their bag and take my stuff as well. So that's understandable. It's nothing new.
No, it's all love. There's we just spoke to Whitaker. We'll be having a yarn to Tyson. Not only is all your family here, but actually the whole MMA community, it feels like, from Western Sydney. There's a lot of love.
Yeah, it's awesome. We can travel now, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Everyone's been locked in the house, I suppose, so it's good to see some familiar faces, and I can feel the love, but tomorrow I've got to go to work.
Yep, in the office. Do you feel better in like a Paris summer than you do in Dubai? What was that like the last couple of months?
Yeah, Dubai's stinking hot, so it's really good. It's been beautiful weather here. Mm-hmm. Doesn't get dark till 10 o'clock, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. It's supposed to be good for the bender.
Yeah, it'll be great, when you come home with the silverware.
Yeah.
I'll let you go now, Bam Bam. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
And do you want to say g'day, Carter?
Yeah.
Say go, Dad.
Go, Dad.
There we go. Thanks, man.
Bam Bam's son there with some stirring words. Now, they both talk about going to work, but perhaps slightly different pre-fight mentalities there.
Yeah, I mean, even listening back to that, having seen him just lose, and I say just like, it was a total knockout, but heavyweight
he was
always
the first one to knock down Big
Yeah.
Cyril, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, everything he said kind of went to plan, but the thing that I think that was the difference here is he'd be 6'6", 6'7". He's carved from
Over
stone.
2 meters.
He's carved from stone. Like he is.
Carved from granite.
Yeah, and he's just a little bit different to the other heavyweights. So the heavyweights have usually got a bit of pudge on them, and they're usually not that tall. And you can see that from all the photos of them squaring up. So when Bam Bam put him on his ass, and I was cheering. I almost had, in my mind it was over when I saw that. What happens is he hits the deck, and that's usually where Bam Bam gives them an uppercut, and they're out.
Yeah.
So where he had him is where he has them when he wins. But what happens is he hits the deck and he sits bolt upright, and he's too tall for the uppercut. So if Bam Bam was to get down and get one into him, it was only going to get him in the chest. While he was, too tall for the uppercut, he was also not tall enough for just a proper punch to the face. So it was an awkward position, and then his boots went up, and then they were back into the fight. So Bam Bam lost by TKO, but that's always how you lose in heavyweight. I don't think anyone. I mean, very rarely do they tap out, and very rarely do they go the distance, and it goes down to points. So yeah, it ended up being Cyril got the punch on Bam Bam, the one that finished it. But I even listening back to his interview now, while it's it's a shame because there was so much positivity there and such a plan. He just didn't get the bickies in the end.
Well, look, could we talk about one moment in the fight? That moment where Bam Bam got kicked in the liver by Cyril. Did Bam Bam tell you how he was feeling after that? I mean, like, I saw that, and you could see. So Bam Bam had his hands up. He copped that boot in the guts, and he takes 2 steps back and drops his guard.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck me. I've just been hit by a fucking Commodore.
Yeah. We had a little bit of a chat. Obviously after a TKO, they have to do medical checks. So we had the after party drinks. And as I said, the whole crowd was there, and it was all love. And it was great that his brothers were there because these are older brothers. And so on paper, he's never won a fight with them. So it was great to have them there because then they kind of keep him grounded. Like, you did well, bro, but, you've never beaten me. And maybe you'll beat Cyril one day, but you'll never beat me. It was great to watch that kind of ribbing from the brothers, and also a lot of love. But I had a little chat to him afterwards. There was another thing there where he got one in the face in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
And kind of looked like it was going down, and that was a fake wobble. I actually had to clarify that, and he tricked him too. That was pretty creative, I think.
Joey Manu did it a few weeks ago in the footy. He clutched at his hamstring and then just burst through and sets up a try. It's a clever little play.
It was a clever play, and it nearly got him there too. He nearly had him there, but I was asking him where he was hurting because you see him, you want to give him a hug. I'm like, I've got to be careful here. I'm not going to get around the head and give him a smooch because his face was and you'll see the photos. His face looked like he'd been in a heavyweight UFC fight. But I do think the ribs and the gut were hurting, and they would have been. Like those kicks you said, fuck, from a man that size who's that fit and that strong, coming at you with a kick like that. The medical check was all good. There was no blood in the piss or anything like that. But you finish a fight like that and then you go out in the piss all night. I just don't know what that hangover would have felt like.
And he seems to make them last for as long as possible, the benders, and puts off the hangover for as long as possible.
Well, no, that's another thing that I've heard in fighting. Like Whittaker was getting stuck into, he was a bit different. He was he was more after match. But Bam Bam had all the family there. And the thing is, they don't go to sleep anyway. After something like that, you just
late night, the hype, the adrenaline.
The hype. You fight at 11 o'clock. There's your body can't deprogram, so you may as well, if you've got all your family there, you may as well just stay up and see and speak to everyone one by one. Like at a wedding when the bride doesn't get round to seeing everyone because they end off, and it was kind of like that. It's like, well, I'm here all night. Everyone's come out and everyone had a little chat to him and he was laughing. He was in good spirits. So
I wanted to ask you about that. What was the mood like after it? Like obviously he was going up against the second-ranked guy in the heavyweight division. This was a big shot for him. And obviously he doesn't seem, looks like he's moving on and he's going forward and he'll be back and he'll be having another crack. What was the mood like? Because obviously it would be a bit deflating, but he seemed like he took it well.
I feel sorry. In that circumstance, I feel sorry for the coach because the coach is kind of looking at everything that's happening in the mat and following the plan and the coaches and all the people supporting that are at ringside. You feel sorry for Bam Bam too, but then again, he's not coming off a string of losses. He's had so many wins that even that now a close loss as headliner to a man ranked above him, it continues the trajectory upwards.
The star power of Bam Bam continues. And he'll get another shot.
He'll definitely get another shot.
He was the first one to, only with his fists, put that bloke on his bum for 2 seconds, but he was down.
Yeah, and that was what the Frenchman said in the post-match interview. He said, with Tuivasa, you don't feel the punches, you feel the floor. Which must, when you really think about it, I just think about how that must feel. Like, the punch doesn't register because it's so hard and fast that you feel the floor first, and then you feel winded, and then you feel fucking like you've been whacked. So, it was good spirits. There was a lot of love, and like I said, it was great that for a loss he had that many people. It wasn't in a pandemic where he's got. I mean, remember that one? Remember where he won and he pissed the bed and in Dubai during the height of lockdowns. It was him and his coach. He had to celebrate that win basically alone with what other fighters were in the hotel that could hang out. So it would have been great to kind of bring home the silverware without the medical checks straight back to the hotel and party. But I was also I think everyone there was happy that a loss could be shared with everyone too.
Yeah, like a trip away with all the friends and family and stuff. It's
net positive all up. But it was interesting, and the entourage that was also an eye-opening experience for me. Like how surgical that is. With everyone knows what they're doing. No one gets left behind, and we're doing dinner. You can come along with it, but also this is what's happening over here. And when you're in kind of Paris alone and you're kind of flanking this crew, it was impossible not to find something to do each night. Whether you want to go with the civilized pre-fight dinner crowd or you want to go rip in with the cousins.
Certainly fun to be had. Now, look, listeners would know, Clancy, that you have a storied history of boxing out here in the Channel Country. There must have been a little part of you sitting there on the side thinking, prime Clancy Overell, how would he fare? What
could have been? Mate, that's like I said, I'm quite a Frenchman in that sense that my eyes have only just been opened to MMA. Watching those welterweights and middleweights on the ground, I've never seen anything like it. And there was once upon a time where I didn't really appreciate what was happening. But, because you see them and sometimes they could do a whole round on the ground. But when you're watching it live, I'm like, there's every little movement here is part of some sort of training and some sort of plan.
they're boa constrictors.
And when you hear the crowd who are, obviously devout fight fans, they're seeing things that I couldn't see. Like someone's arm goes this way and he props himself up and the crowd roars. I was like, okay, this is all a different art form. This is a whole different kind of martial art here. I was glad there wasn't too many kind of serious, I mean, Bam Bam was the one that got taken. He still got to do his post-match interview too in the ring. But like that was as hairy as it got. Just because it was a knockout, they had to do the medical checks. But I don't think no one left in ambulances, which, that's another thing George St. Pierre said. It's like he was very thankful for his fighting career because it kept him healthy, but only just because it could have really hurt him. And that's another thing. There's only so many fights you've got in you. Bam Bam's only young. I know he's not 30 yet. And he hasn't had that many fights in the scheme of things. So it's great that his trajectory is still going up. It's great that Whittaker is kind of reclaiming his place, as a title fighter.
Yeah.
But it's also every fight, that's something I didn't even think about until I was watching these fights. Where do they put those thoughts? I might break both my legs tonight, or I might,
Yeah, I'm essentially going to be hit by a car physiologically tonight.
Yeah. So it was great. It was all good fun. It was good, healthy fun. And I think net positive for both his career, but also just for the opportunity to take 50 friends and family to Paris and let them run riot on that town, which we did.
So were you able to pop your head into the after party at all? Or
That's what I was saying before. We kind of went back there, and Whittaker was there, and Bam Bam was there.
No, like the after
Oh
party.
no! I popped back in to see him the next day, and I think they were all winding down. But yeah, no, it was also because he came back. So the fight's at 11 o'clock. There's a medical check. Didn't really get back into the building, showered. He came down in his sarong and his Crocs. That wasn't until about 2:33 in the morning. And the energy hadn't gone anywhere. No one was flaking. Everyone wanted to see him. And so, that thing ended at broad daylight, 100%, when people started leaving that. And then, the fighters and their close mates and their teams can't really go to sleep. So lucky you're in Paris where the hotel bar just stays open.
Certainly a little bit different to here in Batuta.
I'm sorry, you're the most famous people in our city tonight in Sydney, but we're going to have to shut the bar down, go to bed.
Rules are rules, mate. You're being quite noisy. Out you go.
Yeah, there was none of that.
Well, look, it certainly sounds like quite an experience, Clancy, and I'm looking forward to see what else comes of this. Very jealous. Lots of fun to be had over there in Paris, and then of course Venice. We don't have time for it in this episode.
Yeah, I saw the spit. I saw Spitgate, but we won't talk about that in this episode. What I will say is, UFC are hoping to come to Australia. I think that would be prime for a rematch. Sydney. Bankwest Stadium, Sydney Football Stadium.
Yeah.
Bam Bam's fighting at home.
Yeah.
Cyril
Out
Gane
west,
comes out.
mate.
Yeah, well
come on.
Panthers Stadium. That would be.
Well, even
Penny.
further out west, up north, out here in Batuta, Mayor Keith.
Out here.
I thought you were talking about like bloody
Lithgow.
Katoomba.
Lithgow has UFC.
Lithgow
has UFC. Just a bit less official quite often out there.
Prison screws. Yeah, no, I think that's where the rematch has got to be. And lastly, I'll say I think the UFC should actually pay for their fighters to sit at the front of the plane, because that wasn't happening.
Yeah, how don't you get a big boy like that sitting at the front of the plane? I don't understand.
Well,
It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, but I also think that makes a lot of money to take them to Paris.
Yeah, it was a full stadium in Paris. I'm sure they sold a lot of pay-per-views at $50 or $60.
Yeah.
Well, Dana didn't get rich by writing Czech City, mate. So.
Well, that's why you can always be laughing and smiling, Dana. Anyway, that was the Clancy Overell Chronicles over there in Paris for UFC Paris. It was a great fight night, very entertaining, and very entertaining stories to come back with, insightful as well. So thanks very much.
Yeah,
Clancy.
this is a call out to ARU. We can do the same thing in France, 2023.
Yes, please. We can do it all. Do the south of France, middle of France, north of France, whatever you want.
Yeah.
We'll do it. We'll go inside. We'll get the interviews. Let's make it happen, Mr. Pigeon.
Let's go.